Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Travel. My name is Gary Arndt, and as you can probably guess, I sound a little bit hoarse. And today I'm coming to you from beautiful Lake Louise in Alberta, Canada, high up in the Rocky Mountains, where the lovely snow is falling and the trees are covered with white. With me again, as usual, is Mr. Chris Christensen. How are you doing, Chris?
Well, I'm now feeling much better, thank you. Just by comparison or something.
No, my voice is horrible. I had a bad cold before I left Spain, and it has gotten worse since I've arrived in winter.
So this is what cold and jet lag and altitude sound like?
Yes. And I also do a very good Barry White impersonation. Oh, yeah, baby.
Gary.
That laughing voice is, of course, Jen Leo. How are you doing, Jen?
Good morning, everybody. Doing great. Same old Carlsbad, California.
But this is a very special show. We have been doing the show for 5 years. This is our 183rd episode. And since the show was very early on, we have had one guest that we have wanted to have on this show for a very long time. And it has just never worked out. Scheduling, all sorts of different things. But now, at episode 183, we finally got her. Wendy Perrin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gary. Wow, that's a great welcome. Congratulations on your 5-year anniversary. That's terrific, guys.
We might be up to 6, guys. Was
it's
I
five and a half. 5.5.
Was Cora a baby, or was I pregnant with Cora at the very first tea bags?
Yes.
I don't recall you being pregnant, so I think she must have been a baby.
Yeah, I think she was.
She must have been just a few months old because she is now 6.
Right.
So we're getting up there.
Well, it's not quite true that Wendy has never been on the show. It's just that show didn't quite work. We actually had Wendy on stage at the second TBEX conference to do a live episode of This Week in Travel. We walked up and they said, by the way, you've got 20 minutes and we have to be out of the building. Like, what? So it just didn't happen. It's been the biggest source of our embarrassment for the 5.5 years that we have done this show. So we now get to apologize publicly, Wendy. Thank you so much for coming back.
Well, we get to make up for it today. We're going to have an amazing conversation, huh?
Let's start off with a news story we talked about. Sky Mall is filing for bankruptcy. But this week, Scotty Vest, and now Scott Jordan has formerly been on the show. He's a friend of mine. I used to do some business with him. They've come forward and said that they're considering buying the assets of Sky Mall, and because they've had their products in Sky Mall, he thinks he knows how to revive it and how he could do it properly. Now, Scott, I'm a friend of his. He's a consummate marketer. Do you guys think that this is legitimate, or do you think this is kind of just a PR stunt?
I don't know, but one of the things that he's going to have to overcome, I don't know if you saw the other story, I didn't link to it, but there was a study that said that the amount of money that just American Airlines would save in fuel costs by not having the Sky Mall catalog in every seat back was $340 million a year.
No way. Don't believe that for a second. Not a chance.
It is amazing. I don't know how much. I don't know if that's a real number or what they are, but it is amazing how much they add up. Do you remember when they said we are no longer going to have the manuals, the printed manuals for the pilots, and we're going to go to an iPad? And they announced a number like that. We're going to save $100 million of fuel a year just on the 20 pounds of manuals that we have. So it really does add up when you do that many flights per day. Just 10 pounds here and 10 pounds there is expensive. They spend a whole lot of money on fuel.
Well, I don't want the Sky Mall to go away. I think we talked about that last week. But whether or not this is a PR stunt, Scott's really good at that. So
Sky Mall has to have better things in it. I mean, the problem is it's full of a lot of junk that you don't want, or stuff that you already have that you regret having bought in the first place. I mean, I think it would be great if somebody came in and put some better stuff in there that we all actually want to buy.
Wait. You bought stuff. I've got to hear what is in your house that came out of a Sky Mall catalog, or that I could find in this catalog.
But it's like stuff that, like gadgets for traveling, or things that people give you for a gift because you're a traveler, okay. And they think, oh, maybe she can use this, but of course you're never going to. You've probably all gotten gifts like that.
Wendy, I think you're covering up something. Now, last week we had Paula Froelich on from Yahoo Travel, and she admitted that she bought the doggy staircase that goes up to her bed off of Sky Mall. So maybe that'll make you feel a little bit better in telling us what you may or may not have bought off of the Sky Mall.
No, after that, my lips are sealed.
But here's an interesting thing. After I heard this, I thought about it. What are the assets of Sky Mall beyond its brand? Because almost everything in the catalog was some other company made it,
Right.
and I assume that they did fulfillment. So it's not like they were making the products.
Yeah, the biggest thing would be the brand, and then the deals that they have with the airlines to be in the seat packs. That's the thing that would be hardest to picture, hardest to replace.
So
Well,
if you were to refashion Sky Mall, what would you put in it? I mean, I think that's the big question.
Well,
if you get rid of the armadillo beer holder.
Clearly, the picks of the week from This Week in Travel. All the different gadgets and things that we've held up over the times with the, oh, here's the backup drive, here's the router, here's all of the cool stuff. Some Moleskine notebooks and fun things.
But
They're just more travel
looking.
stuff.
I like looking at the crazy Bigfoot in the garden stuff, so that it's laughable. It's entertaining. It takes your mind off the flight at certain times when you need it to.
It's good for entertaining kids, as I'm sure you know. I mean, like when you're like desperate for how are you going to keep this kid occupied and distracted, you just take them out and shove them, give them the Sky Mall or read it to them.
Oh yeah, Cora will laugh for half an hour looking at that thing.
That's funny.
Here's another story that I thought was kind of interesting. I don't think it's world-shattering, but Hyatt has announced that they're going to introduce a new lifestyle hotel brand called Centric. And I'm kind of puzzled by this because personally I think that a lot of the chain hotels have too many brands as is, and it's kind of confusing. What do you guys make of this? I mean, do you think that it's a good idea to create yet another hotel brand, and is it really going to be that distinct from the brands they already have?
Well, it's definitely a trend. We just saw this with the acquisition of the Kimpton hotel chain by Intercontinental, I think was who acquired them, the parent company of Holiday Inn. And actually they had come out with a different boutique hotel chain earlier, which was the Indigo Hotels. Which are distinct. They don't look at all like a Holiday Inn, and I'm certainly hoping that Kimpton won't lose its character, because I love Kimpton. I think Kimpton's an interesting brand, so I'm hoping that it won't get ruined by being owned by something bigger. I think that there's a place for having the separate hotel chain, and I think most people don't know who rolls up to who anyway, so I think they can position themselves as a very different brand, a very different style.
I had not heard about Hyatt's Centric, but I have been pretty excited about Hilton's new Canopy line.
I haven't seen one. Have you?
I haven't seen one yet, but they're opening up. They have a San Diego branch in the Gaslamp, and they're going to be considered neighborhood hotels. But just looking off the website, they just look more hip and urban and maybe more for millennials.
Neighborhood hotel like Kimpton, where they're not cookie cutter. You're very different from a Marriott Courtyard, which is always familiar. Is that what they mean, or?
Yeah, they look more artsy and designy than that.
Okay, like a Joie de Vivre, for instance, that hotel chain.
Yeah, possibly closer to that. Much different than those. Those look like, I don't know. They're not that welcoming. Those look like hotels, not designy hotels. Wendy, any opinion? Have you been pitched about Canopy yet?
Well, yeah, I have been. I just think there's something like 200 different hotel brands, all owned by maybe 5 to 6, major hotel companies. It's really confusing for people. I think Chris is right that people just don't know the difference. It's like a lot of noise. And what people really want, I mean, let's face it, in a sort of lifestyle hotel or brand, what they really want is a fun lobby where you can go have drinks with your friends, hang out, get a cool vibe. People want to be able to do work in the lobby, grab some coffee, have a nice space to work, where you're not alone in your hotel room. I mean, there are those things that boutique hotels started that I think a lot of other people are trying to copy. And I mean, good luck to them, but it's just there are too many of the, when there are so many, I think it becomes very difficult to differentiate yourselves. And the ones that really stick out are the ones that are quite independent, and then make a name for themselves and then get bought up by the huge companies.
Now, that was spoken like a true extrovert. What people want to do is hang out in the lobby. Some of us, like Gary, who's sitting here in a hotel room with really bad internet, really just want to be in a room with fast internet. So we can.
The hotel wants the lobby to become an it place at the destination, is what I mean. So the hotel wants to be able to attract locals into the lobby, and then the travelers want to be there because they want to hang out and see what the locals are doing.
I would love that, especially if they have a really good coffee bar.
Yep. Or alcohol.
I was at
the. What's your favorite hotel lobby? Because there's only a couple of places that I know of that I think really have distinctive lobbies. The Ace Hotel in New York is one. I remember I've hung out there. What are some other ones that you know of?
Well, like the Royalton. I mean, that's such a great example in Manhattan. 15 years ago, 10 years ago, that was sort of the place to hang out. It's really fun. And then in other, just thinking about Budapest, for instance. You don't want to be in Budapest and not go and see the lobby of the Four Seasons, Gresham Palace, because it's a Baroque feast for the eyes. It's like this Art Nouveau masterpiece, and it's a real scene, So I just think I really like, when I am traveling, I enjoy popping into like the most interesting lobbies in the town just to see what the scene is.
Okay, if we're talking interesting lobbies, we cannot have that conversation without mentioning the Peabody Hotel in Memphis.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
With the ducks.
Yes.
That live in the lobby.
Yes.
Okay, I want to show you one that I got super excited about. This is at the SLS in Las Vegas. It's not the lobby at check-in, but if you order a Lux hotel, which is not that much more, it's less than $100 more per night than the standard hotel. It might be in the $60 to $75 more range. So the Lux entrance where you check in here is this really fun space. Look at that Audrey Hepburn photo. They've got some mid-century modern chairs around. It looks like a living room. And I asked them, I just want to bring my laptop down here and sit down here. Oh, they also had little bites to eat and everything. So this is their VIP check-in. But I was seriously considering the next time I go ordering the room up, even if I didn't need that much space, just so I could hang out in this room.
Well, see, but that starts to lead into the club spaces too. Where if you get this style of room, you get into the club, and some of those are really not worth it at all. The best one that I've seen for that, though, is the Tomorrow Square Marriott in Shanghai, which the top floor of this building that already looks like a rocket ship, it's the 27th floor, something like that, has this view that overlooks the city, has food, waiter service, has good internet for Shanghai, and it's just this gorgeous, gorgeous place to hang out. But it's not a lobby. It's not like people are coming and going and things like that. It's more of a club space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I went to the Ritz-Carlton at LA Live and just hung out with Johnny Jett there one time, and I loved they had these beautiful glass jars of candy and desserts everywhere. I showed up at night, but I like the club rooms.
It's nice also sometimes when you're traveling with a family, you can feed. Well, some of these club rooms have like 5 different, they've got breakfast and lunch and, desserts and all kinds of stuff, and you can feed your family very well. For like, let's say it's $100 more for the club floor, that actually can be a bargain if you've got enough kids.
Right, because it could be breakfast and lunch and snack and...
Exactly, all day long.
Let's do one more news story. This was kind of an odd one. There was a Delta flight where the pilot got locked out of the cockpit. The doors that have been placed in planes since 9/11 are now designed so that they're lockable. People can't go in. And something happened that the door got stuck. So the pilot was stuck outside of the plane, and the co-pilot, who remained in the cockpit, had to do the landing by himself. Everything was all right. I'm always kind of surprised something like this hasn't happened before. I suppose it's kind of the risk that you have with the trade-off with the new type of doors.
And
is this
did it occur to you at any point during reading that story that something happened to happen? He just happened to be locked out, thinking, "Yeah, we weren't having any trouble with the co-pilot saying." It wasn't that the co-pilot locked him out of the cockpit. I'm sure that didn't happen. Just to show that he could land the plane. No.
Well, there are people out there that have advocated that most planes really don't need two pilots.
Sure.
That, in all but, there's been like one or two cases in, aviation history where like the pilot has a heart attack or something like that. That for the most part, you could probably get by with one pilot, and, the vast majority of all flights would be perfectly fine.
The problem is that unless they do the fly-by-wire landing, which is one of the things they've talked about in that case, you don't want to do you're probably fine unless you lose the pilot, and then you're really not fine. You don't want to do that case.
No, I'm sure they'd have to have some other backup system in place, but that would be. I'm sure that the guy that owns Ryanair has considered it.
I'm sure he has.
And Spirit Air would probably be the first people to adopt it. But we got Wendy on the show. Now, most people probably know Wendy as a former editor at Condé Nast Traveler. She's now running her own site, wendyperrin.com. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about how this came about and how you have found the transition to running your own site and, kind of welcome to the dark side of blogging.
Thank you for that lovely welcome. Well, yes, I was at Condé Nast Traveler for a very long time, and I really could never have my own site. It's funny. My husband gave me wendyperrin.com, the URL, as a gift, birthday gift 15 years ago, and I never could do anything with it because I always had to be doing everything for Condé Nast Traveler. And the magazine changed direction. It came under new management, and they were really changing the direction they were going in, and I felt I wanted to write, what I feel so strongly that travelers, and the travelers who are my audience, who are the readers of the magazine and other travelers, what they really want to know and what they, the kind of advice they depend on from me. So I decided to launch my own thing, and at the same time, I'm splitting my time between that and TripAdvisor. So keeps me busy.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Except that I'm not splitting
it
in
I should have
editorial context. But
I actually forgot to mention that when I introduced you. You're the what's the official title? The travel expert for TripAdvisor.
Yeah, they gave me travel advocate. I'm basically the one journalist who's there, and I blog for them and provide content for. There's a Wendy's Travel Tips newsletter that goes out in their member update every Thursday, and providing travel advice. And also, there's so much on TripAdvisor. There's some people can get a little bit lost because there's just so much great information. And so if I can help kind of point people to the best information and help curate it, it's just really helpful to the audience.
Well, and we should say, when you say the one journalist for the main TripAdvisor brand, TripAdvisor.com, because TripAdvisor has 21 different brands. I'm not sure how many right now, but Chris Bray-Faust, for instance, and I think I've met 2 or 3 other people at the SATW conference, the Society of American Travel Writers, who are also a TripAdvisor, but they were in Cruise Critic or Smarter Travel or Independent Travel or whatever. So,
right, or Airfare Watchdog or
yeah, exactly.
Critic. Exactly. There are a lot of properties, but in terms of just TripAdvisor itself,
right.
They've got me, and then of course, 280 million travelers posting reviews.
Wendy, it's not just you running wendyperrin.com, but you have a whole team.
Yeah, that's right. Well, see, as I said, Condé Nast Traveler really changed direction, and we knew that there were a lot of readers who want certain things that they've been getting for years, you know, and so I wanted to continue giving them that advice, and we want to lead them to. They want to have extraordinary trips, and I actually, one of the things I was doing for Condé Nast Traveler was I conceived, you know, 15 years ago and compiled annually a list of top travel specialists. Yes.
I used it. I used it on my family reunion trip to Hawaii, and the travel agent that we used off of that list was able to get us a beachfront house with a private chef. I mean, things that we wouldn't have been able to find on our own.
Right. They're amazing. They can do stuff that nobody else can do. They're the best of the best. And the magazine just wasn't interested in running that anymore, but I knew that travelers really needed this. And so that's one of the things I've done at the site, is created the WOW list, which is a number of different travel agents, tour operators, you know, local experts in various places around the world who do an amazing job planning trips. And of course, there are a gazillion travel planning tools out there. Sometimes you only need the hotel or you only need the tour. There are many places to go, TripAdvisor, obviously, and so many others. But sometimes you really want the whole trip planned in an expert way from start to finish. And that's what these people are so great at doing.
Now, is your WOW list free on wendyperrin.com, or is it a subscription-based model?
It's free. I mean, I put it up there, and people can just use it. And, yeah, no, it's sort of a gift.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about your team. Who's on it, and who from Condé Nast?
Yeah. Billy Cohen, who was she launched CondéNastTraveler.com. She was the founding editor of CondéNastTraveler.com, and she's joined me. She's my director of digital strategy, and she's doing a phenomenal job. I've also got Debbie Dunn. Debbie was a features editor at Condé Nast Traveler, and she's my content director. And we're just creating a lot of great travel advice for people, as well as, you know, sending them to the right people to book their trips.
Terrific.
So now that you've taken let me back up. As an editor, you have a certain skill set in terms of getting articles ready for print and things like that. Now you're kind of more in the role of a publisher, and there's probably more things that you have to be responsible for the site, including profit and loss viability, managing other people, marketing. So what has been the biggest change that you've had to deal with now that you're kind of running your own site, as opposed to what you used to have to do?
It's wearing 30 different hats all at the same time. I mean, it's really what you just pointed to, but it is so tough to be, because everything's important, everything's top priority, and it's not just those 30 different things. It's also actually everything involved with TripAdvisor as well, because I'm splitting my time between the two. Yes, you're absolutely right. There's a lot that has to be done, and I find the challenge is being able to just switch gears and switch hats so quickly every day.
So you're not doing dedicated days?
But that's why it's great that I've got a team. I mean, Billy is handling a lot of the business aspects of the site, so that's huge.
Now, Wendy, I didn't see any advertising on the site.
That's because we're building it all up now. We hope to get there, you know, and to get toward partnerships and that sort of thing. I mean, there's a lot that we want to do, but I mean, we just launched it in September. It's brand new, so we're kind of gearing up, and the first thing we wanted to do was launch the WOW list, and we're going to be rolling out all of these other things over time.
And the WOW list came up in when? Was it January 2015?
October 14th.
October 14th. And so that'll be good for a full year before it's refreshed?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, I will be adding more people to it as I feel that they qualify. So it's an ever-changing thing. It's not like there's one and it lasts for a year, really. There may be more people added depending on, because I'm also getting so many, you know, people can ask me their questions. There's a whole Ask Wendy section of the site, people write in saying, who do I use for this type of trip or that type of trip? How do I rent my villa in Tuscany? How do I do my scuba diving trip in Mexico? And so I'm constantly emailing these people. I've actually decided I'm just going to make all this email visible. Hopefully save myself some time. So if you go to the Ask Wendy section of the site, you'll actually see that I'm answering all these questions for people. But if I find that people really need, for instance, right now, everybody's dying to go to Iceland. I've gotten so many requests for Iceland recently. I need to find a great Iceland specialist. So I'm going to add that person to the WOW list as soon as I find that person, right? Because I want it, that will be easier for travelers to find.
I love this Ask Wendy section. So you've got their question highlighted on the left, and then you've got your answer with links to resources on the right.
Yeah, and that doesn't even include all the questions I'm answering via email. I'm answering a lot just via email, but when I feel like, okay, this is something that would apply to a lot of people, that a lot of people could learn from, I'll put it in the Ask Wendy section. Cuba is another place where I've got to find, there are maybe 3 people I know for Cuba who are really good travel specialists, travel arrangers, tour operators for Cuba. I'm trying to find just the perfect one. I'm getting all of this feedback from readers who've been to Cuba recently, who've used different people. I'm trying to find the right one to put on the WOW list.
Well, Chris Baker is the authority as far as I know. Maybe on the flip side, you could talk him into being a travel agent. Then he could be your specialist.
There are all sorts of possibilities for this website.
He already knows everything, so just have him start selling. Good.
What do you have anything planned in the next several months in terms of expansion? Possibly even going into different medias, maybe like a podcast or doing anything like that?
We have a couple of things we're thinking about. I think it's too early to mention any of them yet. I actually hadn't thought about a podcast. Do you recommend that? I figure we can just bring ourselves on This Week in Travel.
It depends who you do it with.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I've been stuck with these guys for 5 years now.
Yeah, we're dragging them down. That's
yeah.
Well, I've offered Steve Kaufer at TripAdvisor a really good podcast to sponsor. So that one, actually not this one, but Amateur Traveler. I've pitched it to him before.
Well, now Chris, you probably know the numbers better. But when Lou was giving his podcast speech at TBEX, he was talking about when you're a blogger, there are so many bloggers in the sea of blogdom, and when you're a podcaster, explain Lou's theory here.
Well, so what we're seeing right now is there's a smaller audience that listen to podcasts than read blogs, but it's still about 25% of the North American audience listens to a podcast every given week. And what we're seeing with a study that just came out from Edison Research, the share of ear study, is that those people who do listen to podcasts, they're increasingly not doing other things. They're not listening to AM, FM radio. They're not watching as much TV. And so if you want their attention, you really pretty much have to do a podcast. And then the other thing is, in terms of how many blogs versus podcasts in the travel space, it's, oh gosh, the ratio is something like it's more than 100 to 1. It's probably like 1,000 to 1. There's just so few travel podcasts.
I think Lou said it was like 2,000 to 1.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
If you start a podcast, you're instantly one of the top travel podcasts because there just aren't many travel podcasts.
When we get together at TBEX, for instance, typically we'll find about half a dozen, maybe a dozen different podcasters if we count. For instance, we're counting you and Gary as podcasters, even though you don't do the technical stuff, but you still on a podcast, right? That you're still podcasters. So probably a dozen, maybe there out of 700 people. So maybe not 2,001, but it is much less common. On the other hand, it's yet another place to try and build an audience. So I know I've been talking to some people who are building audiences in travel podcasts, and it's getting noticed like anybody else. You still have to get noticed in the sea of content. It's just a smaller sea. It's a lake.
There's a huge number of people producing travel content, huh?
Right.
But it's
Well, and the other thing that's really unique that I find is if you think about this show, so we don't get as many. So, Gary, when you write a popular blog post, how many people read it?
I don't know. I know this. I put a photo on my website every day, and I average about 500 points of engagement. That's a retweet, a like, or whatever. Every single time I put something up, and then the number of people that probably see the image that don't engage with it is in the thousands beyond that. But that's kind of skewed too, because like Instagram, I'll get
Well, on
a lot.
Instagram,
I mean, I'll
you
get
can get a lot of
thousands on
views, but you
Instagram.
can't drive a lot of traffic. It stays on Instagram typically.
That doesn't bother me though. I don't
No,
know, but
but
it's
for
well
what
into
you're
the
doing.
thousands. It's well into the thousands, and if it's a
But if you
if it's
if
like
you
a
write
large
blog
photo
post,
essay, it'll be
that's
into the many tens of thousands.
Okay. So, and then for a photo essay, Gary's going to get a couple minutes of attention, probably. You know, for a single photo, it can get short. It can get 25 seconds, 15, 10 seconds even, for just, I see your photo, and then I leave. For this show, we get typically 2,000 listeners or something like that for every show, right? Our worst episode gets 2,000 listeners. Our best episode gets more than that. But then we have them for like an hour. So in terms of attention, that's one thing that's really can be quite different, and it's also very personal because we're talking in your ear. You're out walking the dog, or you're working out, or whatever. And when we meet people at shows or at meetups or things like that, it's quite often that people who blog and podcast, people talk about the podcast because that's where they feel they know them from. So it's there's advantages and disadvantages to both. Obviously, disadvantages SEO because Google doesn't know anything. You have to still write out show notes that have enough information in there that you can be found. So,
Chris, it just happened to me just a couple days ago. I went to the Travel Massive in San Diego,
sure.
And I hadn't been to any, and I heard about it in Greece when I was at TBEX, and I thought, I didn't even know we had a San Diego chapter. I better show up. So I literally just at the last minute RSVP'd the same day, walked in, and a woman came up to me. She's just like, Jen, Leo, no way. I was just listening to This Week in Travel on the drive here. And she was...
That's fun.
It was great. So hi, and thank you for listening, and I look forward to speaking with you.
Right. And then Amateur Traveler, which has been around longer and is more destination focused, it's the same thing. It's just that it's now, 8 to 10,000. Probably now it's about 10,000 for the least popular episode within the first 2 months, and then continues to get downloads forever. So you have a lot of attention. So that's pretty cool. But engagement is harder. Because, for instance, if we tell people, okay, now This Week in Travel listeners, go vote at podcastawards.com, they're walking the dog and they're at the gym and they're not necessarily sitting in front of the computer. So it's harder to engage with an audience on a podcast, but it's easier to connect.
Now, Chris, would you say that Wendy could find a new audience through podcasting, though? She already has her print following, and those people...
I find my print audience and my audio audience are different.
I don't think it's a coincidence that like Rick Steves and Arthur and Pauline Fromer and Rudy Max and people like that have radio shows. I think that it's a great way for people to get to know you, and I'm actually hoping to launch a podcast in the next month or two. And the companies right now that are advertising on podcasts, there still hasn't been a mass adoption, but they tend to do it a really long time because they're seeing a lot of successful results from it. That they can you put a special URL or something, this special offer, go to url.com/Wendy Perrin and you get 10% off of whatever. People are actually doing it, and Audible.com has been sponsoring podcasts forever, which makes sense because, we're podcasting an audiobook. But like on Leo Laporte's network, the advertisers he has tend to stick around for a very long time because they find it successful. And it wouldn't surprise me that if a couple travel companies start to dip their toe in the water, that they would probably start to see some good results, especially for what you pay.
Well, maybe I'll consider a podcast in future. I don't know. Right now, I've kind of got my hands full.
So many hats. So many hats.
I'm also doing radio and television for TripAdvisor.
Oh,
Sure.
wow.
Yeah.
And they have surveys and findings and stuff coming out. So it's like, I just...
The dirtiest hotels, the best hotels, and all that stuff. You're doing all the PR for them, yeah.
Yeah, these days they concentrate on the best hotels. Their list just came out, in fact.
That's right. They did drop the worst hotel listing, didn't they?
Yep.
And all the controversy around that, which is a shame because it was an interesting list, but they certainly.
What's cool is they're so global that they've got lists of best hotels for all the
right.
many dozens of different regions around the world. So it's really useful to people.
Wendy, now besides all the business stuff and the work stuff, what about traveling? How are you making time for that, and where are you going in 2015?
Oh, it's hard to find the time, but you know what? I actually just did a big trip where I was in Marrakesh, and then in the desert in Morocco. Then I was in Paris for a few days, and then I was on a Viking River cruise for Thanksgiving to see the Christmas markets. My next trip.
Oh, I was supposed to be on that one.
Oh, you were?
Yes, but I went to the White House thing because I had to beg off going on that one.
Oh, okay. Well, no, this was a different one though. This was with my family.
Oh, okay.
Because because the White House blogger thing was beforehand. But in any case, next I'm actually going on. I'm doing another river cruise in March, and then I've got my family vacation coming up in. Of course, vacation. For me in my life, it's like basically I take my husband and kids and they go have fun and I sit at my laptop in the hotel room, working. You know what it's like.
Yeah, and how old are your boys now? They're teenagers, aren't they?
They're 12 and 11 now.
12 and 11, wow.
So I will soon have a teenager, and that's a scary thought.
Mm-hmm.
Do they still look forward to traveling with you, or have they gotten to the age where...
No, they really love traveling. The funny thing is they've loved it since they were just infants. I mean, they when they were just 1 and 2 and 3 years old, they're just born explorers, and they just love embracing new places and new environments and meeting new people and meeting new kids. I mean, everywhere we go, we bring a soccer ball, and they meet the kids, and they go visit a school, and they make friends. It's they love to travel, and they've got a pen pals. In fact, pen pal feels like such an antiquated term now, doesn't it? But you know what I mean. They've now got friends on various continents. It's great.
Now, do they have your boys requested countries out of you? Because Cora is starting to do that for me. She's starting to tell me where she wants to go.
Yeah, and where does Cora want to go?
She wants to go to the Amazon jungle.
Cool. Yeah. Is she learning about that in school?
No, it might have been from Rio too.
Okay. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. My kid. I mean, from the time Doug was 3, he kept saying he wanted to climb the Eiffel Tower. That was his dream, to climb the Eiffel Tower. And we said we're going to take him someday. And then when he was 8, we got them to Paris, and in fact, we climbed the Eiffel Tower. I mean, you can't climb from the 2nd level to the top, but at least we climbed the 670 steps up to level 2, and then took the elevator. And he, it was one of his favorite trips.
That's great. So, do you take them on an international trip every year, or how many times do they go per year? How do you work with the school schedule?
Well, we try to. I mean, it's tough working with the school schedule, but summer kind of makes it a little bit easier. And then usually we'll go. Yes, we'll do at least an international trip. Usually either in February or in April. They get an April break, and that's a good time for a lot of places in Europe. But as I said,
and the rates are not as expensive as they will be in the summer. So.
Right, exactly. And we had a great time taking them on the river cruise because the Christmas markets are so kid friendly, right? And so they got to see 4 different countries, and they went to Vienna, Budapest, Bratislava, and we ended up in Salzburg. And, with Christmas markets in each of those places, they absolutely adored it, and they only missed a couple of days of school because it was over the Thanksgiving break. I got to say, Thanksgiving's a great time to go to Europe. People don't consider it, but because they don't celebrate Thanksgiving in Europe, it's not a holiday. It's off-peak pricing. The weather isn't too bad yet. It's really a lovely time.
That's a great tip.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of which, why don't we segue into our tips of the week? Chris, do you have anything for us?
I may have a tip. I'm actually haven't done this yet, but I'm interested to see how it's going to go. So you were talking about river cruises, and I'm doing two interesting, very different cruises this year. And one is the more traditional, the Holland America cruise, although going around the tip of South America. That's actually the trip that's coming up here in 2 weeks. Where I'm trying to decide, do I rent the tuxedo or do I bring a suit, and you dress for dinner and all of that, which is should be fun, but it's very traditional. And then the tip is I'm actually now booked around Memorial Day for an uncruise, which is a small boat cruise. We're doing Alaska from Juneau to Juneau, going up to Glacier Bay, where it's much more about hiking and sea kayaking and dress for. There's no dress for dinner. There's no bingo. I think there's 75 people on the ship total. So it's an interesting alternative. They're kind of carrying on where Cruise West used to be, except that they're doing less of the naturalist and more of the activities. So I'm really curious to see how that's going to be. I'm looking forward to that, to both experiences, but they're going to be very different.
And they're calling it an uncruise?
That's the new brand, uncruise.com.
Oh, it's a brand. I would be more apt to go on a cruise if they had longer stays in port, especially in places like Europe, because that's the one thing that always bothered me. I've not been on a lot of cruises, but the ones I've been on, you're in port for such a short period of time that you can't really see or experience anything. And
I saw that with some of the Greek Isle cruise where you're literally in town, you're in port for, I think, 3 hours on some of the days.
I think
it's insane.
One way to look at a cruise is to see it as a tasting menu, or like a dessert sampler of different places, say different islands and a group of islands, or a different part of Europe, and you just get a few hours in each place, but you can decide which you want to go back to for a longer trip.
Jen, you have something for us this week.
I do. I wanted to give a shout out to one of our listeners. I found out a man named Scott Newton is listening to our show regularly, and he's a big fan. He also has the website Zerve, Zerve.com, like serve, but with a Z, Zerve.com, and it's an activity-based website, so you can find out things to do, specifically time-based when you are in a destination. So you can plug in your vacation dates, and you can specify whether you want it all day or just morning, afternoon, or evening. And you can also narrow it down to if you're only interested in museums and galleries, or you're just interested in evening and nightlife. I don't see he has a family travel section, so that's a bit of a disappointment. But what I did find is, I go to Charleston every year, and I have been collecting family travel things to do in Charleston. And through Zerve, I found out one that I hadn't known about yet, the Center for Birds of Prey Tour and Ground Access. So since Cora is totally into nature right now, I think she would really enjoy this. And they've got all sorts of bird activities here at the Center of Birds of Prey. And I don't think I would have ever found that in the weekly Charleston touristy mags or anything like that. So Zerve.com for activities, and thanks for listening, Scott.
Excellent. So my pick this week, I grew up, spent basically the entirety of my life in Wisconsin and Minnesota. So I believe I have reached my quota of winter. I'm done. I don't need any more winters. So I've spent the last several years of my life, as I've been traveling, basically avoiding winter. All last winter I was in Australia or South Africa, and this year I was in Spain, which kind of has a winter. It wasn't so bad in Girona. Temperature was like in the 50s. And right now I'm coming to you from Alberta, which has winter. And my pick this week is to actually consider coming to some of these parks in the winter. So I was in Jasper the last few days. I'm in Banff National Park now, and I was here in the summer. These places get several million visitors in the summer. These are the most popular national parks in Canada. And in the winter, coming to the exact same places, everything is empty. I mean, they do have skiing here, but it is nothing like what you're going to see in the summers. It is probably more beautiful because you have snow on the mountains. There are some restrictions on where you can go because not all the roads are open. But for the most part, It's a great place to visit, even if you're not into doing winter sports. And I'm really glad I came here, especially as a photographer, being able to reshoot some of the things I saw in the summer, but being able to do so in the winter. And the big thing I'm looking forward to is after I leave Lake Louise, I'm going to be going to Abraham Lake, which is, if you've ever seen photos of a lake in Canada that have frozen bubbles in the water, that's where I'm going. And it's located just outside Banff National Park, and it's one of the winter wonders of the world is that this methane that comes up from the bottom of the lake freezes, and it creates just this amazing effect. So my pick to everyone is to actually try to visit a national park in the winter. I've heard great things about Yellowstone National Park as well, and even Yosemite, and those are great things too.
Gary, what is not running in the winter? I know that, like, the Athabascan Glacier Tour, I think, shuts down in September or October. Do all of the lifts up to the top in Jasper and Sulphur Mountain and Banff and all of those still run all year round?
The Jasper Gondola was not running. Okay. The road to Moraine Lake here in Lake Louise was closed. I don't know about Sulphur Mountain because I haven't been down to Banff, the town of Banff yet. I'm going there after this. So yeah, not a lot of the back roads are necessarily open, but there's more than enough. And the rooms are obviously much cheaper. You can get a table pretty much at any restaurant. You don't have to worry about any of that. And can I just do something real quick? I need to show you guys this.
Show us your view here.
There is a gigantic crow sitting. I don't know if you just saw him fly, but he was just sitting there. And you can also see kind of how snowy it is. Anyways.
And you're in a T-shirt, Gary. And you're in a T-shirt?
Well, a long sleeve T-shirt, but it's warm inside.
So are you going to go outside at all today, Gary?
Yeah. After this, I'm very close to the Fairmont here in Lake Louise. So we're like just on the other side of the parking lot from it. I'm in a place called the Deer Lodge or the Deer Lake Lodge. So I'll be going over there, taking some shots of Lake Louise, and then probably coming back and spending the rest of the day working. It's kind of overcast, so it's not the best day for photos, but I'll manage to get something from it. Wendy, do you have a pick for us this week?
Well, yeah, I do. I mean, considering that we just survived, I mean, here in the Northeast, we just survived Snowmageddon, and we've got more bad weather coming in a couple of days to the Northeast and the Midwest. And so my tip is crankyconcierge.com. You guys know Brett Snyder, I'm sure. But basically, you know, I got all these people emailing me saying, Wendy, help, I'm stranded in X place, or my airport is shut down, or how do I get where I'm going? I need to get home. You know, I'm going to miss the wedding or whatever. And I'm like, call Brett. If you go to crankyconcierge.com, it's like for an $150 fee, he'll work his magic and he'll get you on the first flight out. He just is an aviation genius, and if anybody can come to the rescue and get you a seat on a plane to where you need to get to, it's Brett. So that's my tip.
That's a great tip.
Well, and that is harder to do these days with as full as the planes are.
Sure
so
is.
Once you cancel, I think one day last week it was 1,700 flights that were canceled.
Well, in 2 days it was 7,600.
7,600?
Last Monday and Tuesday, yeah.
So that's takes more than a day or two to clear out. So.
Oh, sure, absolutely. But like, it just helps to have somebody on your side. And actually, that's what all of the people on my WOW list, that's exactly what they do, is they come to the rescue if you're having travel problems wherever it is you are, you know.
But you can also use them in advance if you have a very, very important vacation that you're trying to have, right?
Oh, absolutely. You mean my travel? Yes, on the WOW list. Exactly. It's for those once in a lifetime vacations when you need your trip to Egypt or to Costa Rica or whatever to be flawless, and you know you want everything expedited. You want to skip every line, avoid every crowd, get into the inside. You know, get in special access to the insider places that are off limits to the general public. I mean, it's for really fabulous trips. It's when you're giving your parents, you know, like their 50th wedding anniversary gift, or you're celebrating your 10th wedding anniversary, or whatever, like special occasion type travel when you really want a fabulous trip. And then, yes, after you've booked through them, they come to the rescue in just those sorts of situations if there should be airline problems.
Now, how do they get their cut? How are they paid? Do you have to pay them separately, or just by booking through them, they get their cuts from the providers?
They have their own business models for how they get paid. You know, I mean, it's kind of complicated,
but it's not an extra fee to use them.
No, there might be or there might not be. It depends on where you're going. It really depends on the destination and the type of trip you want. If you're booking a cruise, no. If you're booking certain things, no. But if you're doing a trip that's going to take them 10 hours to piece together, that's very complicated, like where you're taking drivers, you know, through Italy and trains in some places and cars in other places, and it's all very complicated, they may charge you, they'll say, you know, that's going to be a $250 fee on top of the cost of the trip. But
sure.
The way they operate is that they've all negotiated special lower rates with hotels, with suppliers, with guides, so that they can charge you the same amount you'd pay otherwise because they're getting lower rates.
Got it.
Yeah. So.
All right, then. Let's start to wrap things up. Chris, what's new on the Amateur Traveler this week?
This week's episode will be on Mumbai, India.
Excellent. Jen, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at @JenLeo and at VegasJenLeo. And we don't have a Kids and Trips this month, but we are hoping to book some more soon.
Excellent. And Wendy, where can people find you online?
You can find me at wendyperrin.com, and you're welcome to punch in your travel questions. I'll answer them as soon as I can.
Excellent. And as usual, you can find me at everything-everywhere.com and on your favorite social platform where I probably have some sort of outpost. And until next time,
and
get
Gary,
outside.
Say one more time, podcastawards.com. Vote for your favorite podcasts, including this one or some other travel podcast you know.
This really means a lot to you, doesn't it?
Vote for Amateur Traveler.
Just to be nominated. And that's all I've been, is just nominated for. So yeah, just so in case people don't know, I am, and this is an age-specific reference, the Susan Lucci of the Podcast Awards. Susan Lucci, who was nominated for Emmys in daytime soap operas
All My
for
Children.
14 years in a row before she won. I'm sort of like that, except for I've never won, but I've been nominated every year since they've had the travel category and the Podcast Awards for Amateur Travelers. So.
You got my vote, Chris.
Well, there you go.
All right, then. Until next time, get outside, vote at the Podcast Awards, and check out wendyperrin.com.